Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Horse's Mouth Live, the Extraordinary Advisor Show. My name is Ellen Rogin, and as always, I bring in great guests to help you in every area of your life, especially your business. And we're going to have a conversation today that I have never heard been had in the financial services industry, and I think it's really important. And it's about how are we really being in integrity with our own personal finances as we're advising other people? And we have a really wonderful guest today, Katie Shannon. And Katie and I are relatively new friends. We met her at the beginning of this year, and I'm so impressed with her background and the work that she does with the clients that she works one-on-one with. And Katie really understands how to co-create leaders for today and tomorrow while balancing ambitious, fueled personalities and really big careers. She's worked as a peak performer and leader for really major brands like the Four Seasons, and she's worked with the chairman or the executive chairman of Under Armour and other really big companies. And Katie will probably go into this in our discussion, but she's had this really big career and then dealt with her own issues of burnout and poor self-care and some self-sabotage to come out the other side and take the learning that she's learned to help leaders not face the same things, but move through to be the best leaders that they can really be. I love this in her bio. It says, through her own personal excavation. Like, shouldn't we all be doing personal excavation? Katie now shares the gifts of transformation to other ambitious, addicted founders and their teams. And she believes that we all have the ability to achieve more, to do less, and have more energy to enjoy a holistic life. So Katie, thank you for agreeing to be on with me today. It's so good to spend time with you.
I'm so glad to be here, and I'm really excited to dive deeper into this topic because it's ugly to a lot of people and really uncomfortable and crunchy and messy, and that's where I like to play.
So thinking about our conversation today, I know with the advisors that I work with, and you've been through my courses or work one-on-one with I often see on their website or hear them say, no, I'm the trusted advisor. And what I know from my own experience, and then when I'm talking to advisors that when they get really comfortable will share with me, there's often things that advisors have in their own life that maybe they have a little embarrassment about or shame about in terms of how they're handling their own personal finances. And I believe that even if we think we're putting on this super professional, I've got all my together facade, that kind of leaks through. So share with us a little bit, because I know you've worked with advisors, but also people in all different industries, what your experience has been when there's just secrets or things that are hanging out in the background for people.
This is a great question. And I think it pertains to anyone in business who deals with money. We all have an innate integrated relationship with money. And a lot of us don't dive deep into that underlying story. And as you and I discussed even before we got started today, when we look at our relationship with money, it's a direct representation of how we feel about ourselves. So when I look at my own money story, specifically, I was mixing both professionally and personally. I was attracted to very well-respected companies, Four Seasons brand, Under Armour. I did very well. I was a high performer. I could sell ice to an Eskimo, and that was not a problem for me. And I felt very comfortable in that exterior facade of being comfortable with money and a lot of money and high net worth individuals. But when it came to my personal relationship, I was terrified of that world and my relationship to it. And so because I grew up in a family where my mother didn't work and also just didn't feel a drive to make money. And my dad was very driven, workaholic, and at the same time, always feeling like other people had more and we were going to judge them, that it just created this really internal disruptive and dysfunctional relationship with money. And so that manifested outwardly. So the higher I got, the more crippled I felt internally. But of course, I would never share that with anybody. How dare I? But I just kept becoming more miserable until it completely unwinded me. And I left that world altogether because it just became too painful to be confronted. And I left all of it, and then struggled, went into $20,000 of credit card debt, was bartending on a pirate ship. But I felt free for the first time. So much of my journey was, how do I integrate both of these parts of me and these shadows to be able to be in my stroke of genius and brilliance, and at the same time be able to develop this really healthy relationship with money. So that's my story.
Yeah. And more I'm hearing advisors adding into conversations with clients about, like, what is your money upbringing, and to try to understand that. And I'm wondering how much they've really looked at this for themselves. Like, what is it that you believe about money, and how might that be impacting you? I know I've worked with advisors that have either this internal limit that they've put on themselves. So a little different than your background, where it's like awesome at creating money, or that maybe they're really good at bringing in money, but not good at savings. And so I'm curious about some of the things you've seen with your clients, or you mentioned Debtors Anonymous before, the kind of people that you've seen there. And I want to preface this by saying this is really pervasive. So if you're someone that's like, oh yeah, I haven't gotten that done, if it's a big thing or a little thing, we're going to talk about how this could be the greatest thing that could fill your business versus this like awful big secret that's like an anchor that's going to take you down.
Absolutely. And I think for my personal story, the people that I work with who are extremely powerful, making huge change in the world, in social impact, disrupting existing patriarchal systems, by me telling my story with complete authenticity and integrity, and living in that integrity, attracts the people that I want to be working with me even more. And I think that we live in this culture where it's like, this codependent culture, which to me is chronic self-neglect, and who do I need to be to get what I need, as opposed to, what if I was just completely raw and told my story, and that the people that are going to want to work with me are naturally drawn to me because of that. And I found that to be true in my story. And I love my clients, the people that I'm working with. So to go back to your question, I think, actually, can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, I was like, what was my question? I was thinking the same thing. No, I know that I just want to start our conversation about how to move through this with just kind of normalizing that people have stuff in there, and it may be a little thing in their financial life. I'll just share one thing now, and maybe I'll share another story if there's time. For example, one of the things that's just kind of a littler thing is my husband and I took forever to get our estate plan done. And when I was a financial advisor, I knew I was out of integrity trying to get my clients to get theirs done when it took us 3 years to update ours. And even though I wouldn't have necessarily, I did tell one client that I was doing that, so I had some accountability. But I think that there is this way that people are getting what we're saying, getting what we're feeling and believing, even if we're not saying it. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about how having this stuff that we haven't dealt with first, and then we'll talk about the gifts of it. But what is the impact of having things that we're embarrassed about or shameful about as someone in the financial services industry who's not dealing with their own money stuff? Like, what have you seen is the impact if someone's not looking at that?
Sure. So I'm curious if your audience can relate to this at all, that when we are holding on to those repressed memories or repressed behaviors or emotions that are no longer serving us, it actually turns off the faucet of our genius. Because it's not only blocking, but it's taking up all this room and energy in your body. And so I found, for instance, my genius of being able to attract clients, of being able to sell, just the faucet completely turned off when I was not taking care of and nurturing my money relationship. And I couldn't understand why. I was in complete lack. And so I was cutting off just the energy source that wants to constantly be giving to me, because I wasn't managing my money well. I wasn't nurturing that relationship. I wasn't nurturing my spending plan. I was really loose on my numbers. There was a lot of gray area where I know you have financial advisors that you're working with, like that is their stroke of genius. But I've noticed if you are not taking care of yourself, if you are not being the CFO of your own life, your own money story, that stroke of genius that you're sharing with the rest of the world is going to be a lot smaller.
Yeah, agreed. So I was working with one of my mentors recently and talking about, a lot of the work that I do now is in prosperity thinking and how to be more abundant. And there was just some things that were happening in my business that weren't flowing. And I was like, okay, that feels really embarrassing. Like, here I am. And what he talked about is it's the irony of expertise, but also how it's a really good thing. This is a guy, Cole Fink, who I work with, who's out of Australia. And it's a good thing because then we can sit in our client's shoes. We know what it feels like. If you did everything perfectly, you've always kept all your QuickBooks up to date on your spending, and you've fully funded your kids' 529 plans, and you've fully funded your 401k and got your estate plan done, and all your beneficiaries are perfect, and you would never, ever have credit card debt. That's cool and awesome. And you probably can't relate to what's going on with your clients. And so there's this way that we can step into more empathy when we realize that we all have stuff, and then hopefully move through it.
Absolutely. And Simon Sinek says, we're in the infinite game. So if your relationship to money is predicated on like how the markets are doing, like you're always going to be in this up and down cycle, as opposed to being able to ride the wave. I was talking recently to one of the head execs. He's now stepped down, but he's been with Tiffany's for 20 years. And I remember talking to him during COVID and being like, how is it for you guys? Like, you're in the retail space and like, you must have gotten hit really hard. And he's like, honestly, we haven't had to fire anyone. Like, we've been around since, like pre-Great Depression. Like, we know how this works. Like, we keep a lot of money funds, and we're cash heavy, and the stock market and Wall Street like hates us for that. But like, because of that, we were able to ride this wave. And I thought that was really impressive. And so how are you able, with your own money story, able to ride those waves? And I think that goes for anything. Like, again, I'm a recovering addict, mostly in the relationship space. Money is a huge part of my story, and recovering from that and developing a healthy relationship, like we've talked about. And for me, it's all about that stability, that long-term stability, and building a life now that I really, really love. So I think it's really important to understand your own money story, your own money behaviors. Do you hoard? Do you like to rack things up to then be able to pay it off to get that high? Like, are you getting high in your money story? And are you willing to be honest with that?
Yeah. So interesting. And maybe we can help normalize some of this a bit. Katie, if you can share some of the stories that you've seen. You shared a story of someone you saw who was a financial advisor overspender, or some of your exec clients, of course, with confidentiality, but that are good income earners, are smart people, but there were certain areas that they were less than excellent in, if we call it that.
Yeah, this is a general statement, but I just see it over and over again, that a lot of CEOs, they're amazing spenders. They're amazing at bringing money in. But as far as the money management, like, that's why they have to hire CFOs. And I think I think especially all my clients, I tell them like, you need to be CFOs just as well as CEOs. It might not be your initial skill set, but you need to understand, because if the CFO leaves, if something happens, if they miss something, like you need to understand your finances in and out. It's really important, and to get support. It's not a lone job. But I see, and I work with people who have high net worth, who are, I have a client who's built $1 billion company in 4 years. It's a total unicorn, completely invented a new industry. And he is actually a CFO. And it's just interesting to see the underlying story and how we're all replicating the stories of our childhood too, like what we learned about money. And I think, again, if we can own those stories and learn from them and transform from them, if we're able to educate our clients and for them to be able to understand their money story besides just the management piece, like how powerful will you be as an advisor?
For sure. And by helping clients do that through your own example, but also in the work that you do, being willing to have these conversations with clients, when they get to the other side and that you've created the space for them to feel comfortable sharing that with you, they're going to be so bonded with you that they're never going to want to leave, and they will refer their clients to you.
Yeah. And then you're unstoppable, because I think when you get into that place that not only your stroke of genius, but you feel it, you feel really empowered by what you're offering your clients. Like you're a super attractor. You're not trying, you're not working, you're in flow, and people want to share their experience with their friends or other people, especially when it comes to like who's taking care of their money and their advising. It becomes more of this partnership as opposed to even being an advisor, which I think more people are wanting right now. We're wanting human connection. We're wanting to be deeply connected with people. We don't know how. And so if you're able to do that through your business as a financial advisor and look at yourself more as a partner, and what does it mean to be a partner in that partnership? And how can you start with yourself first by being an excellent partner, just like in relationship?
Yeah. I'm feeling like I want to share this story that happened to me. I was about 10 years into my business, and it was at the time when I was switching, this is the Wayback Machine, but switching from commissions to fees. So my income just totally changed. The revenue model changed in my business. And at the time, my husband made what felt like at the time a unilateral decision to change his job. We had 2 little kids. And I remember being on the phone with my business coach. It was a gray Chicago January day, and I was leaning over my desk crying, and I'm not a big crier, and was just going on and on about how I was so upset of the stress we were under. We owned some real estate, that we had some vacancies, and we were running up credit card debt. And I said to Phyllis, my coach, I'm so embarrassed. If my clients knew we had credit card debt, I'd be so mortified. And I'm going on and on and on and on in this. And she listened. And then in her most appropriate coach way, after I kind of downloaded all this, she kind of slapped me through the phone and said, Ellen, I know you know the difference between thinking abundantly and thinking in scarcity ways. And it really sounds like you're thinking in scarcity ways. I was big in blame on my husband, not taking personal responsibility. And in that moment, I switched things up. My business like skyrocketed from there because I switched how I was thinking about my business. I was willing to do whatever it took to grow it, of course, within ethics. And by the end of the year, we were out of credit card debt. And in the moment, I remember thinking, someday this will be a story I can tell. Someday. It was 12 years later till I actually remembered that happened. Maybe not 12 years. It was a bunch of years later, because I had so much shame around the fact we had credit card debt. And now when I tell that story, first of all, I told how I can tell how I got out of it, how I switched my business, but also normalizes the fact that everything wasn't always perfect. So I really love the idea, and I'd love to hear more how you coach your clients to do this, to take this thing that's less than excellent how do you actually move through it instead of being victim to it, and then use that as an avenue for propelling more growth?
Yeah. Thank you, first of all, for just sharing that story and the fact that, you held on to it for 12 years and had the courage to say it and be free from it. Like, it doesn't own you anymore. And how many of our stories own us? Like, we're in a cage with the story, thinking that we're just stuffing it down. And I think with my clients specifically, we go into the inner basement of their emotions, and we poke around and see, like, what's the underlying trauma that hasn't been released that is holding you on to this specific story. And like, our stories around money are so fascinating. And so often there's like two different stories that are at battle with each other. Like, I know for me, like, I wanted to stay humble and felt like that was a huge part of my personality. But I always wanted more. And so the two of those stories were fighting against each other, not being able to step into my power and being empowered by who I am and what I do in the world, and just being who I am and owning that. And I think too, especially in the financial, it's a very masculine environment. It's very patriarchal. And I think as women, we're taught to, in order to be in our power, then we have to do it the masculine way. And I see that over and over again, as opposed to bringing some femininity into it. So even with my male clients, like, and they're brilliant serial entrepreneurs, like, I teach the feminine, which is easier. It's more relaxed. It's in flow. It feels good. And it's really intimidating to that toxic masculine. That's why, like, it's often suppressed. And it represents freedom and autonomy and relationship. So that's what I typically teach. Like, let's go in there, let's look at it, let's mirror, and let's see how those traumas are actually enacting with your relationship with your money, with the relationship with your clients, with relationship to your intimate partners, your friendships, all of it. How does it all relate? And then how do we transmute and tell a new story that's, if not truer, but the truth, and free ourselves from that bondage, which I think everyone is just tied down right now from these patriarchal, toxic, masculine stories around money. And some of us like to be trapped there in that lack. I have it all through my family. And I just chose, like, I'm not living that life anymore. And I invite other people the opportunity to come out of that as well, because it's so painful.
Yeah. So I'm hearing there's actually really two parts of this, because being my old former financial planner self, I'm like, okay, get your estate plan done, get out of debt. And what I'm appropriately hearing from you is, and process your stuff. Like, it's not just that, or maybe you process your stuff so you're able to do this. And it doesn't have to be hard and awful and years of therapy. Maybe it is for you, if that's like what works, but can also be a process that can be interesting and fascinating. Is that been your case, Katie, that you've seen?
Absolutely. And I find that I see less of a fear of failure. If you're doing big things in the world, or if you are taking a chance, or if you're even owning your own business, you're on the edge of failure every day. You've chosen that path. So you're not afraid of it. Otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. You'd be working a corporate job and being bored and making like a really good salary. So the fear of failure, you're always going to figure it out. That's innate. And I think we need to just see that and see that truth. What I see more of is a complete fear of success, because that we don't know how to manage that. We don't know how to prepare for that. It happens. And then we have to figure out how to step into the person we need to be able to hold the container for that. And that's terrifying. So that's when we self-sabotage. That's when we procrastinate. That's when we are taking forever to do the estate plan, et cetera, because that means we actually have to step into a bigger version of ourselves that is higher vibrational. It's more expansive, and that's terrifying.
Wow. That makes so much sense. Yeah. And terrifying and meaningful and exciting, I would say.
And it's growth. a lot of people are really scared with growth. They are willing to just stay where they are and mediocrity and just, I can manage this. This works for me. And, we've been through a hell of a couple of years with so much change. I feel like we're in it again with just what's going on in the world. And I think, again, we're looking outwardly to figure out what we need to do. What if we go inwardly or just inward and see, like, what do I need to do with myself to just really be the most authentic, integrated, abundant version of myself, to feel really good? Then I automatically want that for other people. And I can stand in my story and all the mess of it, the crunchiness of it, and all the mistakes that I've learned from, and look at me, who I am now.
So this might not be a fair question in the minute or two we have left. But if there was one first step that you would recommend somebody do, I'm thinking the left brain first step is okay, what is it you need to take care of in your financial life? But if we're talking about really transforming, is there one first easy step that you can recommend to people listening, Katie?
I would say, what is one or two things that just keeps coming up for you over and over and over again that you're trying to deny? Don't even know I am lying. I love that acronym. And ask for help. Whether you're just even going on Google and saying, how do I deal with X? Or talk to somebody about this uncomfortable thing, whatever brings up fear for you, talk about out loud. And just ask for help. I promise you, the universe will bring it to you, whoever it is that needs to be your teacher, your advisor, to take you to the next step. But just ask and realize that thing that just keeps coming up for you is coming up for a reason in your money story. And you are worthy of getting help. I know that's super simple, but I think that's the path for us, especially when it comes to money. It's simple, incremental, one step at a time.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. So for all of you out there, money people, we all have money stuff, right? Oprah has money stuff. We all have money stuff. So Katie, thank you for bringing this really important conversation that I have never heard in financial services before and not had with any of my guests on here before. If people want to learn more about the work that you do with corporations or one-on-one with people, what's the best way for them to be in touch?
Sure. You can either get in touch with me through my website, www.shannonKathleenCo.com. You can find me on Instagram at I am Katie Shannon, as well as on LinkedIn. Just go put in Katie Shannon, and happy to talk to you via chat.
Yeah. And I know you have an offer of a no obligation complimentary coaching session. And we just have that up on the screen now at Calendly links. You could schedule that with Katie. She's awesome. And thank you so much for being here and having this conversation with us today. I'm really grateful.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on and talking about things that, aren't normally talked in the financial services industry. That means a lot.
Yeah, really important. And thank each and every one of you for listening and being here with us today. Again, my name is Ellen Rogin. And if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, you can go to ellenrogin.com. And if you go to ellenrogin.com/horse's mouth, you can download my special report, which is what extraordinary advisors know that others don't. And the question to ponder today is, what's the area that you most need or want to look at in your life? And remember, be great and create great every single day.